Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of July 11th, 2011. Welcome to the site. Welcome back to the old members. Welcome to the site to the new members. Thank you for supporting. And don't forget, the Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. But you got to have your question, you got to send it in if you want it answered. So send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. And I will go through all the questions and answer the ones that I think will help the most people. I've done a lot of performance and animation video mails. I chose this question this week because it is a little bit of a departure, but equally important. And I really think you're going to get some good information out of it, or maybe a review if you already know this information. But it's always good to practice these kinds of things with your animation. So let's look at the question. This question goes very hand in hand with a lot of the things that I say here on the site that have to do with making yourself a more marketable animator. I've pointed out in a lot of my lectures that it used to be that you didn't have to know too much about other forms of art, or you didn't have to be a good artist, drawer, but that's just something that these days are giving some animators a huge leg up on the competition. If I compare two reels and they look exactly the same, and one artist then turns in maybe there's a little supplement or a different section on their website or wherever I'm looking at these reels, if there's like a portfolio of just amazing figure drawing work, I'm definitely going to choose that artist over the other. And the reason is because that just demonstrates a even more fundamental, even deeper understanding of the form, of anatomy and force and just all these things. So you just got to make yourself as marketable an animator as you can. So when we start talking about camera work, that is something that has just a lot of application in production, of course, right? It's a no-brainer. Back when Animation Mentor had a short film track, it was just amazing to see how many of the students were getting just like having these light bulb moments in animation, not just camera work or directing, but having light bulb moments in actually creating animation when they had to make their own short films. So I definitely feel like you should be doing this. You should be doing this anyway, and I want to just encourage you to put this one technical kind of roadblock in your way, and it's going to make things just a teensy bit harder for you, but I do think that it's advantageous in terms of how we work in production to get this good practice. Remember, you're not the result of your shots in terms of animation, right? You're not the result of your shots. You are the result of your workflow. So as good a workflow as you have, that's as good as an animator as you are, okay? So case in point, if I see this amazing piece of animation and then I find out that it took someone, a year to do 5 seconds, then they're not a very good animator, are they? Right? And if I compare that to someone who did the exact same quality of shot and they did 5 seconds in a week, then they are a better animator. Why? Because they have a better workflow. Okay, so this all goes back to just improving your workflow, making yourself a more marketable animator, and knowing a little bit more about the processes that you're going to deal with in production. Okay, so first off, the first part of the question in terms of camera angles and lenses and things like that, I'm just going to run through them really quickly for you right here. Okay, so let's just imagine, for instance, that we have two characters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to import a character. I'm just going to start with bloke, I guess, and let's see here. Here we go. I'm going to start with bloke, and the idea that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a scene where one person is like bullying another guy. Okay, so here's one bloke. Let me just go to my reference editor and duplicate this so I don't have to navigate to it again. Okay, so here's bloke, and here's another bloke, and now let's scale him up just a little bit. So what we have is a character who is, one character is going to be bullying the other, okay? So the first thing that we need to understand is what our lens is going to be doing to us in terms of how it's going to reduce or enhance the effect of the shot that we're trying to create. So I'm looking through a perspective window right now, and you can do this to a perspective camera, or you can do it basically create a new camera. It doesn't matter for right now. So let's just navigate around and see what's going on. As you can see, when we're zoomed out, okay, this is actually a misnomer. Using the Alt and right mouse button in Maya doesn't actually zoom your camera. It actually dollies your camera. Okay, so I'm going to try to be consistent when I'm saying that, but if I'm not consistent, please forgive me. Okay. Why is my grid so crazy? I'm just going to turn that off and create a little ground plane. Okay. So this is very dollied out. This is dollied in. This is what we call a close-up, okay? So as you can see, the relative size of the characters, as in what size this character is relative to him, is apparent when we are dollied out, when we're far away, okay? When we push way in, the effects of perspective take over, meaning if I orbit the camera around back here and you squint your eyes, which character is actually bigger in composition? It's this foreground character right now. And so that diminishes the relative size that this background character has on us, okay? If we come over here, because this character is relatively smaller and this character is relatively bigger, and we have perspective working for us, now he looks even bigger than he is. But again, if we dolly out and we look at their size, that's kind of what we get, okay? So you need to make sure, let's say that this is a scene where this guy is bullying this guy. What do you want to do? What kind of emphasis do you want to create? Well, you want to make it so that the bully seems really, really big, right? So if you take a low angle, which is good because he'll be looking down at us, but you have your puny little wimp in the foreground like this, well, then you're going to have a lot of trouble because look at this composition. Squint your eyes again and it looks like there's a giant in the foreground. So that's when you start playing around with your focal length. If you go up here and click on that, that opens your camera attributes panel, and then on the right, focal length is the third one down. Okay, and it defaults at 35. And you can change this actually. When you go create camera, this little options box actually saves what you create your cameras at. The perspective is always going to default to 35, I believe. I don't think you can change that, but if you're creating cameras, you can change it. I actually normally set this at 50, okay? And I'm going to hit create. All right, so I'm going to look through selected now. All right, oops. That's all right. All right. So now at 50 is still a pretty wide angle lens. Let's go back to this new camera's attribute panel. So the higher the focal length, it means the more zoomed in it is. Think of zoom this way. Think of zoom, if we are dollied out, think of zoom as taking a narrower window of your current state. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's not going to move the camera, it's just going to kind of crop in. Another way to think of it is it preserves the relative shape, or flattens the composition, or reduces perspective. Okay, so let's take it up to 100 millimeter. Okay, that's your focal length. Now check this out. Even though my puny guy is in the foreground, the effective perspective is greatly reduced and my bully still seems bigger. Let's take it up to 120, which is considered, I believe it's either 80 or 120 is considered a portrait lens. I can't remember which one it's called. And at 120, we pretty much have surpassed the point where my perspective is actually making my foreground character bigger than my background character. And it's going to be even more pronounced on the other side. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It's going to be less pronounced on the other side because perspective, remember, is playing into the scene. See, here's 35. Okay, so if you're shooting over this character's shoulder, you want to be very, very, very high focal length, very zoomed in, okay, or long lens. I'm trying to use all the terms that you're going to hear in production, okay? You want to shoot this long, all right? And if you're over this guy's shoulder, the big guy, you want to be shooting very, very, very wide. So you get that big perspective, okay? All right, now, in terms of the 180 rule, I've been doing it purposefully wrong. I've been looking over both of their right shoulders to show you this scene. But what is the 180 rule? The 180 rule basically says that wherever your camera is placed, it establishes a line that in most applications you should think is perpendicular to the camera plane, okay? Or sorry, parallel to the camera plane. So the camera's shooting this way. If we go into a perspective window, okay, is basically, let's just make a new, all right, so this would be my 180 plane. Now why is that? Is it absolutely necessarily true that it's going to be parallel? No, but it's a good place to start. Really what you need to make sure is that the subjects that you're shooting never cross over in your camera image. So what does that mean? So if we shoot, let's say this is our first shot, it doesn't necessarily mean that the 180 plane is now parallel to us, but we need to pay more attention to our foreground subjects. It's almost as if the plane is first kind of created and considered to be parallel to the camera, and secondarily is through our two subjects. So what this basically means is that this is my over-the-shoulder shot for the bully. Then my over-the-shoulder shot for the puny guy has to be over here. Okay? Now why is that? Because if you squint your eyes right now, take a look at the puny guy and take a look at the bully. They spread out in composition, they spread out and come back together, but my puny guy is always on the left side of composition. And my bully is always on the right side of composition, even though I'm shooting from two different angles. What freaks people out, let me just delete this, this plane here. What freaks people out is when you start a scene like right here, and you shoot these two characters, and then you go all the way over here and whoop, shoot the other angle. Because what it looks like is that the characters switched positions. Right? So you may be noticing that all the animators that are in the that are winning the 11-second club are submitting stuff with shots with really, really good camera work, and they definitely follow this simple rule. So now let me tell you just one thing that I feel like you should be doing in order to get good production practice. This does make animating just a little bit harder, but you will be able to hit the ground running in a much better way when you're in production. All right. So most people like to use the camera sequencer tool. All right. So I'm going to, here's my wide shot. Here's my over the shoulder of my little guy. Okay. And I'm going to create one more camera. And here's my over the shoulder of my big guy. And let's actually make this a little bit wider. Okay, so now I've got my three cameras. If you go into the camera sequencer tool, animation editor, camera sequencer, all right, then what you can do is you can import your shots, okay? And so the way you do this is you go create shot, and right now the sequencer only has this one, angle, okay? So you can create a shot with all the cameras that we created here. Create shot, and then camera 3. Okay. Now I actually don't need the perspective. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink down the ranges, and you want to use the top number. The bottom number actually speeds up and slows down and retimes the animation as you see it through that camera. And you can actually do some nonlinear editing in your scene if you use that. Okay. So I just created. Shot 1 is frame 1 to 5, shot 2 is frame 6 to 13, and shot 3 is frame 14 to 24. This is very, very, very quick. Okay, so if I play this back, okay, it's very, very, very fast. Actually, it's kind of hard to watch, but suffice it to say that it's cycling through all my cameras. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So what normally people are doing, and this is okay that you're doing this for like 11-second club and whatever. The pitfall that you have is that you are relying on the animation to hook up from shot to shot. And so what I would do is, after you work out your entire sequence and you're happy with your sequence, I would actually cut up your shot into, this one has 3 different angles, I would cut it up into 3 different scenes and animate them with 4-frame handles or 8-frame handles. And what that means is that shot 1 goes from frame 1. You don't have to have a handle on the beginning of your first shot. But shot 1 goes from frame 1 to 5, let's say. You actually animate it 1 to 13, right? Plus 8. 1 to 13, all right? And then you assemble your scene in an editing program. You can use whatever you want, iMovie or Movie Maker or Premiere or even After Effects or whatever. But that cut point is still on frame 5, but you have 8 frames extra that you've animated that you are using to massage, we call it, or work the hookup, so that the animation, the movement from one shot blends nicely into the animation from another. Winning the 11-second club is fantastic, and it's really great, and it's prestigious, and you get an e-critique. It's really nice. However, there can only be one winner, and everyone else should be considering that they're getting practice. And so I really do think that practicing hooking up your shots is a very emphasized task or thing to practice from schools and programs and whatever. So I would definitely recommend you do that. So shot 2 is frame 6 to 13. Okay, well, let's say this really short sequence like this, let's just do 4-frame handles. So that would mean that shot 6 is actually frame 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all in the handles. And then your cut point is actually frame 6, and then instead of 13 being your last frame, it'd be 17. And so 14, 15, 16, 17, those are your 4-frame handles at the end. You're still cutting on frame 13 on the end there, and you're still cutting to, shot 3, which is starting on frame 14 right now. You're still, cutting from frame 13 to 14. But what it does is, in your editing program, you can actually slide the edit. You have 8 frames that you can slide the edit, forward 4 or backwards 4 frames. And you have all that playing area, okay? And so you can actually participate in editing. And so just what I was saying before about how the Animation Mentor students were getting just really awesome practice doing a lot of things that you never would and never would be exposed to or anything. This is the exact same thing. It's just a really cool way to be ahead of the crowd and know what's going on in production. So don't ever, my one tip, if you have to take one tip from this, is don't ever use the default Maya 35mm lens camera and just, you know, shoot your entire sequence with just one camera, one static camera or anything like that. I really think you should get some practice using different focal lengths, different framings, and then instead of animating all in one camera sequence, actually get practice animating hookups. I know it's a little bit harder, but that is better practice, and that's what I want. Those are the kind of tips I want to give you, what is going to make you a better animator at the end of the day. Okay? All right, great question, and please keep them coming. I need more Ask Videomail questions. I can't answer anything if I don't get asked anything, so send them to me, please, if you haven't already. The address is webmaster@kennyroy.com. I promise I go through all the questions and I answer the ones I think will help the most people. Thanks a lot for supporting the site. Keep kicking butt, and as always, rock on.